And digital euro is, to say it in a polite way, a political element. And the digital euro will most likely, to my intelligence of knowing, not be tokenized in the way that we think about tokenizing assets. So it's down to also then using this one eventually as a political instrument. So it means, do we prefer euro or do we prefer dollar, or why don't we all now use the yuan in China, which is already out there. It's used for trillions of settlements. So I think in this context, we need to see it from where are you actually doing the transactions, who are you interacting with, and do you need it for, as said, the apolitical situation? Then it might be more actually efficient to have a stablecoin that has liquidity in a global market worldwide, compared to saying just the euro.
Magnus, it's great to see you here in Riga. Thank you so much for joining us in our pop-up studio.
Likewise. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, just before we start, for those who have not had the pleasure of meeting you, Magnus, tell us briefly who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Magnus Jones. I wear many different hats within this landscape. One is I'm part of the Nordic Blockchain Association, but I also used to be the Nordic Blockchain Innovation Lead for EY, Ernst & Young, for close to 10 years. So I've been working very wide within this landscape. Right now I'm running and just about doing a new startup, but working literally with everything from the smallest DeFi actors to TradFi, to bank and that sector, and also for governments on the other side. So it's a widespread in the joyful craziness of this landscape of doing everything from tokenomics to compliance on the other side.
All right, now Magnus, I've had the pleasure of listening to you speak in many places, in Bergen, in Stockholm. You're a very, very well-known and respected voice in this area. So I have to assume that if you're in Riga, it's because there's something important happening in Riga. So tell us, what's your view on what's happening with regards to blockchain and crypto in Latvia?
Absolutely. And I think this is not only about crypto per se. I think it's about the title in the conference in itself. It's about doing the unblocking of things.
All right.
And I think that's the most important thing that we see now, that we need to move away from having a magic, sparkling standalone solution in the corner that is actually integrated into existing infrastructure of ERP systems, of other layers, that is actually a protocol like the blockchain is. It is a protocol, so it should be integrated to other IT layers. Okay. And that's why I think this conference is also important, because they have taken another approach to actually getting more of, call it the business side into it, and not only being crypto degens who meet each other. On the other level, I'm also here naturally to represent Nordic Blockchain Association and also present now, we have recently had a great survey in the Nordics, covering Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and also Iceland, to see the crypto adoption in lots of different ways. So we have recently now carried out a new survey covering Latvia. So we will present brand new numbers tomorrow for that one and compare it to the Nordics. So it will be interesting to see. I just received half an hour ago the brand new report in. So if you follow us tomorrow, you will see it.
What a cliffhanger. All right, now I think that what you mentioned, that's really interesting, is bringing businesses closer to the IT component of blockchain.
Yeah.
I think we've seen various facets of this warmness towards blockchain overall from business. So what's the current state of the nation? How are businesses now looking at blockchain? Are they more receptive to it? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think in general, the wording blockchain is not a word that is perceived well in general. It's sort of an outdated terminology. People have the perception that, like, yeah, well, isn't this something that didn't scale or fail or whatever? But you have to look into it, I think, in a different way to see what will happen is not that people link blockchain to Bitcoin, to crypto, to whatever, and why can't we or can go down to 7-Eleven or pay the conference ticket here with crypto. It's rather on the back-end infrastructure side where you will not see it, feel it, or hear about it if you are grandma or the taxi driver or the journalist in general. It's rather that it will be used in a tokenized way, to create efficiency, to do settlements, and also do validation, but it has to be then, as said, integrated in together with other IT infrastructures. That's suddenly when it makes sense. So one of the cases that I also talked about during Stockholm FinTech Week, for example, where you guys were and others, is the classic case right now of SAP, one of the largest ERP system vendors in the world. And where you can actually pay then invoices directly using stablecoins. So they are legally approved. If you sit on the back office, you don't need to have a PhD in blockchain or understand crypto. You can just use drop-down selection 1, 2, 3. You pay instantly, and also the accounting is dealt with instantly. And then suddenly, you shift it towards saying, well, paying with crypto, does this make sense, sort of thing? Yeah, maybe not Latvia, or Sweden, or whatever. But if you say Latvia, Sweden, it could make sense. And also from the intercompany perspective, then suddenly it's dealt with in a totally different way. Because if you pay an invoice directly also, you can negotiate on the price compared to saying, hey, normally we pay the invoices by 30, 60, 90, whatever days. So you can negotiate a discount. On the other side, you will also get the customs declarations, the pro forma invoices, all the things you need to, say, deduct import VAT. That's also for liquidity matter. So it's a win-win on both sides, and everything is settled in a system that is already there. So it takes you half an hour to get the update in the ERP system, and then you can reuse it. And then suddenly we're talking at a different level where it's not about blockchain per se or crypto, even though you're both using blockchain and you're also using crypto. You're just using it as an infrastructure element that works more efficient and is doing cost saving and time saving in your existing infrastructure. And I think that's the level where you need to move and shift things compared to seeing yourself blindly on whether or not it's Trump coin being at the moon, or if it's Melania being on the bottom, or if it's Farcoin going to the moon. It's not about this. Bitcoin per se also has a very important element in the whole surrounding of being decentralized, I would say, in the world we are living in today, because it's apolitical. So that's an element that I would like to stress and enhance. But when you look into, call it, the rest of the altcoin markets, that's a volatility that will always go up and down and will be, call it, noise in general. But it's also an important driver to drive the innovation that made it possible to say, for SAP to actually make the solution and make it possible also. So we need to see it in the whole context of it. So that's why it's important to be places like this in Latvia, in Riga now, where all different actors are meeting at a joint level ground, and where we are actually talking business solution and not hypothetically what blockchain can do, but it's actually what it's doing.
All right, here's the risk of being controversial. Listening to you talk about this SAP case, I cannot help to notice that a lot of the things that you're saying strike very similar to what we're saying that the digital euro would do for markets.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound to me like you're saying that the digital euro is at all required if we can do all these settlements with stable coins.
No. And digital euro is, to say it in a polite way, a political element. And the digital euro will most likely, to my intelligence of knowing, not be tokenized in the way that we think about tokenizing assets. So it's down to also then using this one eventually as a political instrument. So it means, do we prefer euro or do we prefer dollar? Or why don't we all now use the yuan in China, which is already out there? It's used for trillions of settlements. So I think in this context, we need to see it from where are you actually doing the transactions? Who are you interacting with? And do you need it for, as said, the apolitical situation? Then it might be more actually efficient to have a stablecoin that has liquidity in a global market worldwide compared to saying just the euro. So in my view, there's no doubt in mind that we will get a euro at some point of time. When we will get it, we don't know. But while we are discussing this one from also the regulatory point of view, updates of legislations, there's lots of things that need to be updated when it comes to these kind of things, and call it the CBDC talk that we're talking about, and I would say maybe mix up the crypto sphere into. Then we are actually now doing these things with stablecoins. It's not about if we can. It is happening right now. So that means that shifts also our leverage compared to the euro. So I personally don't believe that the euro will have the strength From the global perspective, it might be led to an adoption in Europe in itself by some parties being more or less forced and feel they have to use it.
Yeah.
While from the international perspective, I much more believe in, call it a decentralized infrastructure, but where you need to also, of course, have the AML part, anti-money laundering, and also the KYC element on who is using what. So there are nuances towards the whole thing. But again, back to the example, when SAP is doing this one, it is for the reason that their legal team has approved and said this stablecoin, that stablecoin, and this stablecoin we can actually use, and this is what you need of conveniency. So I rather personally believe much more in that part compared to saying we will have a government initiative of a euro in itself.
Right. Well, thank you very much. That's actually a very, very good answer. Now, one last question. So this is a two-day conference, and today is mostly targeted towards getting people more broadly acquainted with the whole concept of blockchain. And so my question to you is, what do you think people that came here today should go away understanding that perhaps they didn't understand before, or clarifying in their heads when all the noise we've been getting from blockchain over the past few years have formed an idea?
Well, so far as it's an ongoing event and it's still running, what I've heard is a good mix of it all. I think we've heard good use cases here and there of, call it, how to mix it into your existing infrastructure like we talked about. But also down to important elements like they're having, for example, the tax authorities there to inform you how to deal with it, because that's also an element you need to understand, that if you're using a token-based infrastructure, that also has tax consequences. So that's also something you have to calculate into, call it, your pricing if you are to use it. So again, if you understand how to use it, it's very efficient and cost saving. But if you don't understand it, it can turn out to be a little nightmare also. So I think what we see in general with regulation coming in place, where we have the MiCA, the markets and crypto assets in the EU, I think what we've heard here is also how to adapt to this one in a sensible way. And we also see, even though it appears to be a union in itself, we still see it's all up to the so-called competent national relevant authorities, i.e. most likely the financial authorities in most jurisdictions, to do, call it, interpretation. So that's where also it's very interesting to hear from the Latvian side of how they have taken an approach to maybe be more lenient or willingness or showing more openness to attract players to come into this landscape compared to other jurisdictions also. So it's been lots of interesting talks so far. Indeed.
Well, Magnus, it's great seeing you here in Latvia. It's also great seeing the Nordic Blockchain Association represented here. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you for stepping in our studio.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.